Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Semantic Agent. This is a podcast about how meaning is structured, how intelligent systems interpret the web, and how agents are reshaping the search landscape. I am Beatrice Gamba, Head of Innovation at WordLift, and in the first episode, for those of you who were with us, we explored a big system question with Andrea Volpini. What happens when search shifts from retrieval to reasoning? And today we want to move from theory into practice because once we accept that search is changing, the next questions become how does the work change? And how do workflows change? And especially, how do the skills change? And how does SEO change when machine learning stops being an add-on and starts becoming part of the operating model? And that's exactly what today's conversation is about. I'm joined today by Lazarina Stoy. She's the founder of ML for SEO and one of, in my opinion, the strongest voices working at this intersection of machine learning and practical SEO. What I value in particular is that she doesn't treat machine learning as an abstraction, but as something that has to be and can be operationalized. Her teaching and consulting helps people think about automation as an infrastructure, data sets as assets, and how the systems evolve in the agent-driven environment, especially related to SEO. And I strongly share her vision. So I'm very happy to welcome her. Hi, Lazarina, and welcome to this episode of the podcast.
Hello, hello. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very humbled to be the second guest, especially following on from Andrea. And thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. I'm very excited for this talk.
Me too. So let's dive into it. I'd like to start with a distinction I think a lot of people are struggling with. So you've spent years helping SEOs automating workflows with machine learning, and now we're moving into agent-based systems. So where does automation stop and true agent behavior actually begin?
So I think that a lot of the what people refer to as agents right now are still kind of like automations in a trench coat type thing. So let's backtrack a bit. When I started, so I did machine learning in university, which was about 6 years ago. I graduated with a master's in that. So at the time in SEO, there were a few people that were the true innovators when it comes to automating workflows, Andrea being one, Hamlet Batista, and others like them that were really automating processes with APIs, Python, doing that kind of work. And so at that time, automation and SEO was very niche, like very not accessible to a lot of people because SEO wasn't really as much of a kind of like coding, building your thing type of discipline. It was very much template driven in terms of the processes and the workflows. And I still think it kind of is, but no one was really like doing Python. Well, not no one, but definitely a minority of people. And so within the past few years, we've seen a lot of, a massive shift, a lot of people learning how to code and not that much how to code on their own, but with the help of LLMs and AI chatbots and the like. And I think that's amazing because a lot of people are now really discovering what process automation can do within SEO. But what I see is that agent behavior hasn't really come, not only in our discipline, but in general. So the difference is that there is not true autonomy in the processes that are being built. And I think that autonomy is the key step. We kind of saw that with OpenClaw, that autonomous agent that can help you, can do everything, and so on. But it was very quickly shot down as an idea. Well, not entirely, but still, the risks of this definitely outweigh the benefits because of security risks, prompt injections, leaking data, deleting data, all of that stuff. So right now, what we're seeing, I think, more is LLMs building workflows or being a very strong integral part of the workflows that people are building to improve their SEO, to make it faster, to make content writing better, or building briefs or whatever else it is, like the common use cases. But it's also automation in the way that systems are being built, tools are being built, websites are being built. Like LLMs have definitely helped scale these processes. So a lot more people are now building websites, optimizing landing pages, doing like technical SEO fixes and tools and so on. So yeah, to answer your question, automation is definitely here now more than ever in our industry, which is fantastic. Agents, in my opinion, have definitely not been part of process automation as much as people have ranted about them on LinkedIn.
Yeah, right. And I still feel, I mean, automation is, as you're saying, is very much here, everywhere. And but agents are kind of, being a thing right now. So I was at dinner last Sunday, and there was this friend of mine that said, "Oh, I would really like to know more about Claude. I would like to build my own agent." And she comes from a totally different world, and did when I have dinners with my friends, I'm considered like Chandler being from Friends. No one knows what I do and has no idea whatsoever. And so when someone for the first time in years like mentioned agents, so I obviously popped in and trying to make it interesting for everyone, but they are kind of slowly entering like the day-to-day life
Mhm.
of people. I mean, people who work in the digital and web, of course, but people use these terms interchangeably, like automation now immediately leads to agent, but as you are pointing out, they are different things.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
and
also a lot of people are very much, when you're not within the industry and when you're not on a day to day experimenting with the new technologies that come up, it's much more easier to be kind of swept by a fancy headline of, like autonomous agents are here. Here's what OpenClaw does. Or, the mold book discussions. I've had so many messages from my friends, again, in the same position as you when it comes to my role and what I do. And so many friends were texting me saying, "Oh my God, are the agents taking over? Is the AI sentient now? This is like, how can you say it's not the right example?" But researchers actually showed that these kind of experiments are exactly what has happened when two agents communicate with one another 10 years ago, 20 years ago, since the very first experiment. In the early 2000s, I think, there was like an experiment between like two bots, and they switched talking to between them in like language they could only understand. And then there was also experiments done by Microsoft on the same thing. So of course it's different because the LLM technology is different than what we had before, but the underlying behavior is the same. So again, there is now more access than what was there before to agents, chatbots, LLMs doing that kind of tasks. But also right now there is so many threats to actually achieving that autonomous behavior, and I'm not really sure, based on what I've read in like academic research, that the underlying technology to be truly autonomous is there as well, because of the lack of reasoning capabilities. So for instance, if you say to your OpenClaw agent, "Don't delete my data," and it still deletes your data, that's obviously not, it's not an example of autonomous behavior. It's an example of, a guardrail failing. And I think that's where a lot of people are a little bit confused. I think the truly autonomous behavior would have been to, have the impulse, let's say, or like the process or the code or the task to do that, but then go back, double check, and discard the deletion step, right? That would have been the truly autonomous behavior. But yeah, we're not there yet. There's definitely a lot of kind of pitfalls in the autonomous agent technology, and but the good thing, like I said, I think in my opinion, it's a very good thing that a lot of people now have a lot more of like a technical aptitude, and also like the hunger, the drive to experiment with stacking different tasks and tools and APIs together to build an automation. And in some cases that can actually, when paired with LLMs, that can mimic some sort of autonomous process happening with the proper scheduling and so on. But again, it's not really agentic autonomous behavior, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I totally agree. Like, it's also a matter of the accessibility, how accessible is the tech stack, and also the notions needed to access that level of, expertise to build anything on the web. And I think that, LLMs made available to people that are interested in building something the knowledge. So you now can learn almost anything on the web, and it made the tech stack as less of a black box as before. And I really love this about LLMs, like how it helped democratizing the accessibility to knowledge. Let's say, I think it's one of the best use cases. But yeah, the distinction between agents and automation matters, because once systems begin behaving more dynamically, as we are saying, it changes the underlying inputs that we optimize around if we want to slightly shift towards SEO. So this brings me to query behavior. So you work on semantic keyword research, and the work that you do goes very deep into query understanding, semantics, and building query data sets. But if agents are generating, reformulating, rewriting these queries dynamically, what happens to the idea of a keyword data set?
So I think that's a great question, because I've thought a lot about this particular course that you are referencing on ML for SEO. And a little bit of backstory. When I was researching for the topic, and compiling my own workflow, and looking through my experience with how I've done keyword research, what I wish was different, what I wish was better, and researching patterns and so on, I was really amazed at how much of the information that's in that course is actually quite old. The patterns are there since the early 2000s. The work of Bill Slavsky has been referenced prominently throughout the course, because he really was, signaling the direction, the path on which we're walking right now. And so now when I do a lot of research for iPullRank, I have some 10,000 word articles on their website, which you should absolutely check out if you're interested in my research in AI search systems, different platforms, experiments, and things I've done in the past few months. Now I actually see that the semantic keyword research that is taught and that was kind of indicated in the past decade really is very integral to the way that agents and AI search systems and so on expand your original query. So let's take, for example, the entity structure. They would decompose a query that is, your prompt that you enter. They will decompose it, do lexical analysis on it, then they will do entity extraction from it, and then they will map the map these entities to relevant entities that are approximate to that query. They will do entity attributes. They will do different variables that are in that proximity, like that semantic embeddings proximity space of where your query is landing. And so that's one way that they would expand queries, right? Another way would be, again, based on embeddings, different synonyms, all of those like 8 types of synthetic queries, different ways that they would expand it. So the point is, if you are building keyword universe, to understand your topic, what remains is that core research that you're doing on your topic. Again, the entity piece that we talk a lot about in the course, also the understanding of the queries in terms of the path, the progression of queries that are being made in order to get from first indication of where the user is at to a point of satisfaction with the information that they're receiving. I do think that that query path is shortened when it comes to AI search as opposed to traditional search, because users are not really doing the researching themselves. And I also think so yes, just to kind of summarize, a lot of the things do remain, and I think they are really important to how AI search systems generate synthetic queries and how we should be thinking about them. So what are the 2 things that I think are changing? And the first of them I actually covered in the course as well, that search volume isn't a good predictor of the potential of a keyword. I know this because I've worked on programmatic SEO projects, and if you look at the programmatic SEO best use cases from, like, let's say 5 years ago, which was like Zapier, you know that the keyword search volume metric wasn't really something that they used to make their pages, but it didn't stop them from getting millions of visits and growing their business as a result. So now what I think is we should be thinking not about the traditional set of metrics, like the keyword difficulty also is no longer a metric that is important, because if we assume, and again, this is a big assumption, but if we assume that the user base of AI search systems is going to continue growing, then we assume that they're going to give more traffic to websites, and the way that they decide who to cite and what traffic gets transferred to these websites is very different than like the referral links, the ranking in Google, and the keyword difficulty score really becomes obsolete. So now we should be thinking more about like the entity coverage, whether the queries that you are targeting are in alignment or at drift with your brand. That's something that's really important, I think, that it is really missing from the framework that we were teaching, like, let's say a year or 2 years ago or 10 years ago. That concept of drift now is very, very important. And also, how do you track ranks as well? That's also something that, I can talk a lot about, but I'll stop here because it's a little bit outside of the topic of keyword research. But I do think that, tracking citations and tracking inclusion, again, is kind of more of like a branding exercise, and knowing whether you should appear for that data set, whether your content really allows you to appear there, whether the user that you're maybe targeting is actually the user that is searching for these things. All of these questions are more of like a branding thing as opposed to an SEO thing, but now we have to be in the room when that conversation is happening. So I'll stop talking now. Hopefully that has to
I totally agree. So in a way, we can also say that this change also what we consider a query altogether. A query is no longer just a query. It's like multiple user intents, and each and every one of these user intent has to match in a way the how your brand wants to appear under the light for every one of these intents. So as you're saying, and I strongly agree, it's a matter of of branding, understanding the core values of your brand, and what are the how different you are from other brands that are doing the same things. And this has to be more and more present also in the content that you are delivering. And I mean, this is the new SEO, really, in my opinion, like conveying how different you are from the others.
Yeah, yeah. Also, I do want to add another point, and it complements what you're saying as well. I think that, by the way, for anyone listening, Beatrice also has a module on that course, which is absolutely amazing, and you should absolutely check it out if you haven't. Um, I do want to say that something that we have been teaching before your appearance in the course, and something that you mentioned in there as well, which has a lot of value and a lot of importance, is actually user research should dictate how you do a lot of the configurations around what keywords to target, how to present your brand, how to organize your content, and so on. That really isn't something that has been done, at least in my career in SEO. We really didn't have a lot of user research when we were doing keyword research. But I do think now is the time to actually weave that into that process. If you have that data, how users are searching, which platforms they're searching as well. So one other thing that I would expand this process with would be data from other platforms. I do that. We talk about this in the course, and that's part of the process. But now more than ever, I think that the user journey is so fragmented. So instead of looking at just, like, let's say, AI search and Google, I would do like a massive keyword universe of including TikTok, including YouTube, including all of those different sources where your audience is, and then really breaking it down to personas. Again, that's something that we cover in the course. And then one thing that you put a really, really big pin in is actually having that layer that looks at how your brand is presented, not only on your branding guide, website, your sources, but also on third parties as well. I think when you are researching how you are positioned and what kind of conversations are happening in your niche, I think it's really important to look at all the other spaces, because right now with AI search, they are really featured so much more prominently than what you would see with traditional search engines. So a Reddit thread from 5 years ago may surface in a conversation now that is, disparaging about your brand. And you should be on top of these things. And being on top of that reputation management starts with the keyword research, starts with the auditing, competitor analysis, and so on. All of these steps that really do reside in the SEO department. And so, yeah, I think that's something that people overlook, and it's quite important to really be successful nowadays.
Yeah, right. So we can say that this query layer itself has become fluid, let's say, and then perhaps the discipline itself starts looking less like, it may feel less like content optimization and more like system design. And you teach SEOs practitioners to build data sets, clusters, classification systems, and I believe this pushes us towards a bigger question. So, is SEO fundamentally becoming a data systems discipline rather than a content discipline? I mean, is the data resulting in the content rather than the opposite?
That's again, I think that's insightful. I don't know if it's either or it's both at the same time. So I really believe that to be a good SEO, and maybe it's because I've worked with mostly enterprise organizations and SaaS companies that really have a massive market they want to kind of penetrate very quickly, and that has kind of conditioned me to think in data sets and think in systems. I do also think that as an industry, systems are very useful, especially when you're rerunning audits, when you're doing processes and so on. So I really do believe in that. And like I was just saying, it's so much more valuable to look at a landscape whether it is queries, whether it's competitors, markets, and so on, to look at it from the standpoint of data and data points from which you can extract insights, as opposed to very fragmented pieces of the full picture. So if you're just cherry picking competitors instead of, doing a SERP analysis, for instance, and using that to inform your decision, you're kind of, from the get-go, you're going down a path that's very limiting. So that's just one simple example. But I think in the work of SEOs, thinking in a limiting way only results in a limiting, output, whether it's your strategy or tactics and so on. So that's why I do believe in SEO has always been a data discipline, and those SEOs that do practice with this kind of thinking in mind, they do have a lot more comprehensive strategies. And what I've noticed is a lot of the people that do think in that way, they don't really like the term SEO and the way that it's being used. They're mostly gravitating towards organic visibility because they're thinking more about, okay, we're doing SEO, but what about social? What about video? What about, all of these other things? And again, user research, like how are people talking to us? How are we doing customer service? All of those data points. So I do consider myself in that camp. And I know a lot of great SEOs are also kind of in that camp as well. So I do advocate for that. And I think machine learning, AI, is a perfect ally to people like this, because you cannot comb through the data without automation. But at the same time, you really do need to have that strategic thinking when it comes to, the human brain, as opposed to outsourcing it. So that's what I believe in. But the content piece is interesting because I do see right now kind of like a shift. And again, from companies that I really like, admire, and products that I like. But the shift is more towards content can now be engineered, which I'm not sure that I'm fully on board yet. I don't think that it can be something that can be fully automated and still have the outcome that people want. So if traffic is the outcome of automated content systems, before, yes, it can work. Traffic can be gained. But now I think if we were to go with the assumption that AI systems will be the new norm, or something that people will kind of gravitate towards when they're doing research, what we've seen is like the most engineered piece of content could actually not get cited at all. It can be used to inform the answer, but it might not have enough information that's unique to the user to really be used. So in that line of thinking, I'm not sure that if you're, engineering content as opposed to really putting first party data or like something unique and, having information gain and so on, I'm not sure that that is going to be like super successful in the long term. But maybe I will stand corrected. I don't know. We're quite young in this game of content engineering.
Yeah, I think that we have now a third layer, right? So we have content for humans, we have content for that we want search to retrieve, as in, SEOs, but also as in search engines and also LLMs. But I think that now we have also like a third layer, which are the agents. So now also agents are consuming content, and it may not be for search. It can be consumed and absorbed and then used for other agentic workflows. So now we also have this third layer, and I do believe that content can be engineered for agent consumptions, but of course it also has to be aligned to all that we know, like it still has to be consumed by humans as well. But now we have this third layer, as in human search and agents, and that's like something that we started talking about in the beginning. And for example, in my daily work at Wordleaf, we reason a lot about like what type of content, what type of data agents need to consume. And I think it's an interesting part because it's very much under development. And I think it's an interesting point of view as well.
Yeah. I do agree that there are technical things that we can do in the kind of the realm of technical optimization of content to align it better for agent consumption. I recently saw a couple of things that I want to highlight. The first one was the presentation of Alex from Yoast on Search Day. He talked a lot about the data no snippet tag that you can put to limit some of the content on certain pages, maybe like legal notes or things that you don't really want to be ingested by an AI. That's one part. And we also now have a lot of experiments being done in the industry about MD, like Markdown, and whether pages like this can actually perform better for citations and agent consumption as well. So from that point of view, I'm fully on board. Yes, engineering content to be consumed by agents, yes. And also the things about formatting, absolutely. I think a lot of people do, yeah, perhaps that's I think a lot of people over-engineer the strategic and content planning aspect of content to be about agents and kind of missing the human element. And that's where I think at some point within the next few years, we're going to see websites full of content, but not really saying anything. And that's where I was going with the fact that content engineering, maybe the way that I understand it, is kind of at this point a little bit lacking the human element in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, and of course we've been working on a course about optimizing for agents, also as you mentioned before. And one thing that I keep noticing is that, and what we just said, people may be optimizing the wrong things entirely because there is no univoc definition of optimization for agents. From what you're seeing, where are people optimizing the wrong layer when they try to adapt to AI systems?
So I what I was saying, it really leads me into this because I think a lot of people are optimizing like on-page optimizations as opposed to thinking about the source. Should our brand be associated with these entities? How do we actually associate our brands with those entities that do exist? And yeah, again, plugging course that you have already developed. You've talked a lot about the entity layer, knowledge layer, the knowledge graphs that every company should own, and how to develop that, how to harness that, how to track citations and so on. So I do think that that's the first piece where people are really lacking, and I do see that in industry as well. There is a massive debate on structured data, which I think is really, it's surprising that we're arguing about this because structured data helps in traditional search. Structured data is, helps to develop databases that power almost any search engine that you see, right? Like all of the search engines on all platforms are built based on knowledge graphs and entity structures and ontologies. And I do want to put a pin because I know right now you have thoughts and I do want you to share them on this. Obviously, like everyone working at WordLift would, kind of see the struggle. And I wonder how you people survive the daily is structured data needed in an AI search systems debate. So yeah, in my opinion, yes, structured data helps not only in traditional but in AI search. There is, of course, that part of it is stripped during training when pages are processed. but at the same time it's still ingested at a later phase. So I really don't understand the logic, but I digress. So where should people be optimizing? Optimize for entities, optimize for your company knowledge graphs, um, build the bidirectional links. Again, something that Beatrice has talked a lot about on the ML for SEO Academy, how to do that. And I also saw, again, the tool shared by Alex, that Yoast has now this graph of all the entity relations of the schema that you already have on your website, which I do think is amazing to audit what is there, what is linked bidirectionally, what isn't, and to actually see your schema on your website, your internal knowledge graph, how it looks like and what can be improved. So I would start there when you are optimizing, for AI search, because that not only is that for AI search, because they do feed from those same databases, but it's also for traditional search. And it's also a very good exercise internally to see whether your brand really should be aligned with the entities that you are talking about, whether it shouldn't, what are you missing, what are your competitors aligned with, again, where are you lacking, where are you better, what you should develop, harness, and what you should drop. So I think it's a really good way to start. And the second thing is that kind of measurement and visibility layer, which I think still is very much in its infancy with the entire industry. So just tracking where you are retrieved, and whether that makes sense within the queries that you're being associated with, the competitors that you're being paired against, whether that makes sense for your brand. Where are you getting citations versus just being used to inform the answer? I think that's another one that's a big kind of important part. So just, the whole measurement around retrieval, I think, is another piece where people are not really putting that much attention in. And I do say that with a caveat to say that I don't think prompt tracking is something that will stay, or that is really much worth the
Thank you.
investment. I really don't think so. So I would just I would do the bare minimum here and just build your own scores around how many entities do you own, how many are unique to you, how many are shared between you and your competitors, kind of turning the measurement from queries to entities and to topics. I think is kind of the next step in which we're going in. And I hope that that's, the direction which the industry takes. And also on the topic of AI search systems, instead of tracking prompts and kind of investing thousands of dollars into prompt tracking tools, I would just again do the bare minimum, but then play with the different user personas, how they might search for your brand. And yeah, I did say this in my presentation on Search Day the other week, that we are seeing the resurgence of metrics that used to be considered vanity metrics, like share of voice, which is a very good indication that the measurement systems that we have in the industry at the moment are completely broken. If people are, flaunting a share of voice score and being like, oh, we are the most cited, thing in the category, which means nothing, it really does. So I'm hoping that we can kind of move towards pairing that data of citations with revenue and actually making that conversation about, is this really needed, and do you even need to appear and compete in AI search engines? Maybe your audience doesn't even use them right at this point in time. So again, it's just those are the two things that I think people are getting wrong. I'll stop here, but I think I have more thoughts.
I agree.
Let me know your thoughts on structured data, please.
Yeah, I agree 100% with everything that you said. And I do believe that in general, there's a tendency over indexing on prompts while neglecting the data. And this is a behavior that I'm seeing on many people are thinking that, okay, are we tracking the prompts correctly? Are we intercepting the prompts? But yet they want the content to be seamless and natural. And this is like decades all
Yeah.
the matter. It's like it's keyword stuffing all over again. At least it
Exactly.
feels
Exactly.
like it to me. So yeah, I also find this like a very particular. And on the structured data, I, I would say what you said. I mean, even if it gets truncated, it still is ingested by both LLMs and also agents. And this is why I focus so much on agents, because agents will become and are becoming like big players in the search um, industry. So we are now reasoning in terms of non-human personas as well. So what agents are we targeting? Are we optimizing for the right agents? How do we help these agents that we are targeting getting the right information? So structured data helps with that. And the fact that, the the code of the pages gets truncated or not, still, giving the right indications and signals to traditional search engines and agents alike, it's still very much of a big task, and a mandatory one nowadays. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Also because, with all the tools and with all the automation, everyone, as I also explained in the course, should be able to do that, because we have much more
Yeah.
instruments than before. So to me, this is like mandatory nowadays.
Absolutely, it should be. I think two things to say. The first thing is that I do also think that if we imagine agents becoming better, even like a tiny bit better, like all of the, well, that's not a tiny bit, but if all of the concerns, like the threat concerns and like the data security and all of that, if that gets resolved, which is not a tiny matter, but it is possible in my eyes. The question is how long it will take. But if we imagine that future, then AI search systems like ChatGPT, Claude, whatever, those will be stepping stones to that, and then they will disappear, right? They will be just, something that existed, but now I have my friendly agent on my computer that knows everything about me. And in that scenario, and it's also the scenario right now with AI search systems, because like I talked about in one of my articles that's recent on iPull Rank, they're very personalized, and that's why prompt tracking doesn't really yield very good results,
Yeah.
because you can't access the memory and the chat history of each individual user within your data set. And that's also the case for traditional keyword tracking as well, because again, Google is also very personalized. But yeah, again, people are kind of missing that point and selling a lot of services that agencies don't really need, and clients as well, like enterprise clients. I can't even imagine the bill for like a lot of the organizations on prompt tracking. So yes, budgets are definitely kind of skewed in the wrong direction, in my opinion. And yeah, if we imagine agents being the future, then that will even make the conversations even more personalized as well, and all of the searches and the personas, like you said, will kind of be a mix between like the agent persona that I would imagine being more pragmatic one, and then the human who has like more kind of emotional decision making capacity as well. But as I think it's a little bit far away in the future, this kind of scenario, but still it's something worth considering when we're talking about these things. So knowing that agents are pragmatic and data ingesting machines, why don't we give them structured data? Is my question. Prepare for that future. You can start now. That's what people have been saying for the past 10 years on the topic of structured
Yeah.
data, and I don't even want to imagine what people like Anne from the Schema app would think about. Like, maybe you should have her on and ask her this question. Let's just talk about structured data. How do you feel?
Yeah, and then
Because they've been talking about this for years.
yeah, of course. Yeah, we're friends. And yeah, the episode could be like days long then.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, we've discussed this. So what you do is you build your work around making machine learning practical for marketers, and this is exactly like the way you explain things and how we've been discussing proves it. So, and I believe that that practical lens is especially useful right now. And also, we tackle this. So, where is the industry over engineering solutions, and where is it underestimating the real complexity? So, we have still a few minutes left, and I'd like to pose this final question.
Yeah, so in short, I think that with the introduction of a lot of machine learning terms or like AI terms, a lot of people are, taking some of the concepts that are used in machine learning and are applying it to everything when it comes to SEO. And a lot of people have now started noticing this, but you don't need custom embeddings for everything that relates to SEO. So for your internal links, for your content, for your keywords, for everything, just like custom embeddings on everything. And I think there's a few examples with this trend. You kind of the SEO industry hops on, it takes something from a machine learning and then applies it to every single workflow where it shouldn't really be. And also building APIs and tools from scratch is something that is accessible now. You can do that, but should you, is my question. I think that's where, we're over engineering things that really do exist. Or the other, I think, more harmful thing is using an LLM to do a lot of tasks that actually should be done by a custom, tailored for that task API. And so I think those are the ways where we are maybe wasting time, where, don't reinvent the wheel, is what I always say in situations like this. I also do want to point out something that I'll be talking about in the Brighton SEO presentation that I have in a couple of days, that is about like the sustainability impact of all of this. So what happens when you're using an LLM for everything when you can use a custom model? What happens when you're using an LLM for searching it for everything when you can use it, Google search and your brain and actually thinking? And I think we are doing not a lot of service to the environment and also to ourselves when we're outsourcing absolutely every single minor task to an LLM. So I do think that there's a lot of hype around AI, but not that many companies are using it in a way that is that constructive to their work, to productivity, and also to long-term to their employees. I do think that a lot of people really have discovered, the good side of this, which is building things that you can reuse. So not building something from scratch for everything, but building kind of like little helper tools that can make you be more productive, more efficient in the way that you do things, which has kind of been the philosophy of my idols when I was starting, the automation journey I'm on now, and has kind of been my mantra as well. If you can build a process around something and then automate it, that's amazing. But if that process already exists, you don't have to build it again, and you don't have to kind of feel left behind if you're not really fully on board the agentic, like OpenClaw or whatever else is trending right now as an SEO, because you should be aware, but you shouldn't really be doing things just for the sake of doing them, I think.
Yeah, I do agree, and I also think it's some kind of educational and cultural matter that it's often underestimated on the use of AI in general. I have many conversations also with my friends. I have a lot of friends that are teachers, and we discuss a lot about like how do we talk about these instruments to young adults, let's say, as well, because I also have friends that teach at university, and despite the fact, that we might use it for things that we should be doing like with our own brains, but then there's also like a more practical level on using it with purpose. And I think that there should be more focus in general, also at a society level, about talking about AI with purpose, because each and every one of us has, its own purpose. And then if we have more instruments to make it happen, they should be made more evident sometimes. But yeah, this is just like a very high level thought. But yeah, of course, also it applies to companies as well. Like right now, to me personally, it's very difficult when someone sends me something that's obviously done with AI. The jargon and how it's built and written makes it more difficult for me to understand, because it does not go straight right to the point. So it uses a lot of, extra words and sentences that are not needed, which makes me think, okay, but what do we want to say? What is the purpose of this? And these, instead of streamlining the processes, it adds even more, it puts more weight. At least this is what happens, to me when I get to see this type of output. But yeah, of course,
And
this
if you
totally,
think about it, it's a cognitive load for the person reading it. It's
yeah,
also another step for the person that has edited it, if at all, because I've been part of projects where actually the editing takes more than the what it would have been if a human writer worked on the piece. And then also now you have the environmental cost as well, and the environmental cost on its own has so many different facets related to it, that also tie back to the human cost as well, because all of the whatever data centers that are being built have an economic cost, they have an environmental cost, and they also have a cost for the people living around them. So it really is a very exciting time to be working with these systems and to have them introduced so widely. I think before there were different periods where AI became trendy and then went out of the trend, because it didn't reach the expectations in terms of investment that people were having in it. But now I think it's exploded to an extent where if it continues on this trajectory, there will be a lot more conversations happening, not only what we're seeing right now with privacy and so on, but also about like how do we actually harness this technology and use it for what it should be used for, not give everyone access just because they can, because that's not really something that would be sustainable if all 8 billion people on this planet have access. So I don't think we have solved societally these challenges yet, to be honest. So yeah, just food for
yeah,
thought.
I totally agree. So yeah, this was delightful, and we ran out of time. So Lazarina, thank you. This was like a really rich conversation, and also deeply relevant. And I love that it pushed the conversation from what is changing to how do we actually work inside the change, which I think it's a very tactical point of view. So to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on another episode of the Semantic Agent. So if this resonated, follow the podcast, stay with us as we continue exploring agent semantics and the future of search. See you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.